Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to say a lot of my questions are for staff. It's very frustrating and disappointing to be at this point here today. To the board that's here, thank you for attending. I know that your service to this board was well-intended, but what we've learned and unfolded over the course of the few weeks, almost month, that the media has also shared, it's very disappointing that such poor decisions were made along the process. And I will be honest, I'm so frustrated and hurt because this is a tragedy that took place 7.5 years ago, and it's not to blame to you all directly. I'm actually so appreciative that you came. But here we are, and what we've done is we've met families. We've met individuals who are so frustrated, have questions, are angry, are sad, and we've done nothing to support these families or memorialize their family members that have passed in this time. And I know they say hindsight is 20/20. Could we have started with something simple? You know, a field, something to start this memorial. But what we're dealing with now is technically misuse of funds, poor decisions made on what the contract had been offered through the tourist development tax. And lastly, we still don't have a memorial and we don't have a space to call. And I hope that my colleagues on this board, as we're discussing TDT again, will join in making sure that we allocate funding to make a museum at the location that was purchased. But I do want to ask a couple of questions, Whitney, and I know we had a brief discussion yesterday, and you were very candid with me. I mean, you're just a messenger. You're a facts woman. You're running with that. But when we talk about these poor decisions where you've sent letters that individuals who've been renting the property, direct violation of the contract that we had with them, do we know how long this has been taking place?
So, Commissioner, the copy of the licenses that I received, 2 of them were entered into in 2022, and the other 2 were this year.
Okay, so within the last year or so is what we can imagine. We can't find anything else prior to that.
Well, there was one prior to that we agreed to for the parking lot in 2019, so I assume that one has been re-upped. Maybe that was re-upped in 2022. I think that was one of the parking ones.
Okay, and I know Comptroller Diamond, we talked about what we paid for the property, which was around $3 million. Have we at all looked at the value and assessed what that cost would be now? Like, has that value grown over time? Because I worry about that $6 million that we discussed that we're in the hole, and how much can we get out of that? I'm also worried about the grant funding that was spent, and so just curious to know, have we looked at the value of the property and where we're going now?
Well, I know Ms. Severs said that she wanted to get an appraisal as part of the due diligence, which we think is a very good idea. As far as the property and what it might be worth, I do know that you've got across the street from there on the northeast corner, there's a mixed-use development that is in the works that should really help that area, I think. And I know the city of Orlando's had the goal of seeing that neighborhood transition from industrial to more of a retail and residential area, given its proximity to downtown. My personal feeling, as someone who lives basically down the road from there, is that it's a very nice area, and I think it has a lot of potential, and I think it's a valuable piece of land.
Great.
Commissioner,
Yes.
sorry, on that front, I just wanted to let you know that real estate management has done an internal cost estimate on that, an informal one at this point. That's coming back around $4.5 million, but we would need to do the official appraisals, 2 of those, to confirm that number.
Okay. And a question I'm sure many people are wondering, and I'm wondering, has anyone ever looked into the nonprofit? Have we investigated? Over the course of weeks, we've seen $18 million spent on salary and compensation and all these things. Have we looked at this nonprofit? Has the state looked at this nonprofit? Have we internally looked at this nonprofit to see its validity? Because at the same time, we've seen the executive director resign. We've seen folks off the board resign. And there's a lot of questions. I don't know how much is factual about board members getting paid, the exorbitant amount of fees, salaries, compensation. I know that there was a comment that there were 8 employees that were paid. has anyone, or is a state attorney or anyone gonna, I mean, one thing I hear consistently is what's happened to the money? Where did the money go? Where did the money go? And I think that while you guys are asking for appropriate documentation, I think I want to know, where did all that money go? You know, that is a lot of money that has gone away year after year, and we're just looking at their 1099s and things like that that are very simplified. They're not in detail. But that's concerning because there was clearly income coming in too, but there was outgoing tremendously, way more than what was coming in. And when you talk about a nonprofit, you really want to say, is anyone investigating this nonprofit as a whole?
So Commissioner, I can't speak to the state. I don't know of anything that they have done at this point. At least no one's told me about that. For the county internally, we have not investigated per se the nonprofit. As I mentioned, when we asked for the documentation, part of what we're trying to do there is help to answer that question, which is, where did the money go? How much were they bringing in? How much is left? So that's what we're doing at this point. Under the agreement, the foundation was required to abide by all of the appropriate rules, laws, and regulations for the 501c3 and their corporate structure. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Comptroller, but we have been getting quarterly reports and we have been getting the updates that were required under the agreement, so presumably they have been maintaining that structure. I don't know, though. I haven't seen that documentation yet.
Yeah, because like most, which brings me to the point, like most things in government, there's a process. You file your paperwork. Doesn't mean that they investigate, doesn't mean that they've checked that it's accurate. Because I know, I feel like I'm repeating myself, I think it was about 3 years ago when, and this is completely off subject, when we were talking about the Tangelo Community Center that was run by the YMCA, like, did we check our own property? Did we know that there was a violation of the contract? How much teeth do we have in our agreement with tourist development tax to really not only just release them from this, but what comes behind that agreement that's been clearly violated by this organization? And will the state pick up on it? Like the $400,000 that they've received, have they fulfilled what that grant was issued by the state? Because I know in our conversation you said we may have to cover that cost at the same time, and that's very discouraging. And the also other thing, and I don't want to get the board involved on this, but when they purchase designs have a stamp that are only good for so long. So if the money wasn't coming in to balance out actually breaking ground, why would we have built? Why would they have paid for designs that would have been out of term, out of zoning, and out of use by the time they were knowing that they were going to build when it wasn't there? A picture could have been fine, but actual design is sealed and ready to go. So and we should find out if there's any, what was that decision? But lastly, I would agree. I hope Comptroller Diamond gets involved in an audit with this. I think that not only we want to know, the public wants to know, the families want to know. Everyone wants to know what has happened. This organization was established less than a month after the tragedy, and here we are 7.5 years later, and we don't really know anything internally besides what's been given out. And I think that for us, just financially, do they even have enough money to pay us back? But where we stand to go forward, and how, at the end of this, how do we make this right? How do we actually do something for this family and take control of this and move forward on this museum and doing something that's right after all of this that's been mishandled? So I look forward. I hope you start getting responses on these letters that have gone out. I hope they start, acting and we get all the information demanded, because it's a bad feeling today, but I'm thankful for you guys moving us forward. Instead of us still wondering, you guys have done the steps to move forward. But I hope, Comptroller, you will really exercise that right as the guy who checks and balances everything and looks at that, and we'll review this.
Well, and thank you for that.